Good morning and welcome to our presentation of the Study Abroad Data Analysis by Kelly Filgo at Sam Houston State University Higher Ed Department. Today we're going to be taking a look at predicting participation in study abroad programs, the findings of a statistical study of U.S. citizen students who've not yet spent a semester abroad. What we're setting out to accomplish with this study is we're trying to discover if there's a statistically significant correlation between student perceptions of their institution's contributions towards certain educational goals and the likelihood of a student choosing to participate in a study abroad program. If there are any correlations are indicated or suggested, we're going to recommend ways to build on that connection and increase participation in study abroad programs. And if no statistically significant correlations are found, which is entirely possible, or if time allows, we're going to explore at least one other area outside of institutional contributions for statistically significant differences in students that would suggest other ways to increase participation in study abroad programs. So here's what we looked at. We took a look at data from the 2011 National Survey of Student Engagement that this institution participated in. We took a look at 7 questions regarding student perception of institutional contributions. What that means is students are given an opportunity to talk about how, or to voice their opinion on how well they think their institution contributes to several factors. I picked 7 of them that I thought were relevant to what we're doing today. Got the acquiring a broad general education, thinking critically and analytically, learning effectively on your own, understanding yourself, understanding people of other racial and ethnic backgrounds, solving complex real-world problems, and contributing to the welfare of your community. So those questions were selected for the following reasons. We feel that they relate to educational goals that might be connected to making a decision to study abroad. So in other words, if the institution is promoting certain ideas, certain values, then maybe that leads to a student deciding to take action on that by going and visiting another country for a semester or for a short-term trip. So these are questions that the institution can work on enhancing if there are any correlations are discovered. And we wanted to take a look at things that the institution had some control over. So that's why those questions were selected, or this type of question. And they're based on how students perceive certain aspects of the institution's priorities. We're also basing our analysis on an assumption that when a student feels their institution values certain priorities, then that student is more likely to plan on studying abroad. And just so that you're well informed, here are the possible responses to the questions that we looked at. Our main question is, do you plan to study abroad before you graduate from the institution? There were 4 possible answers on the survey. One, they were done. In other words, they've already done it. They plan to do it. They are still thinking about it. They haven't decided yet. Or they have definitely decided that they do not want to do it. Then all of the 7 questions of institutional contribution had the same 4 possible responses, which was that they believe that their institution either is very much promoting whatever the specific contribution, that they do it quite a bit, that they do it some, or that they actually do it very little, and therefore it's not, as far as the student perceives, is not a high priority for the institution. So here's some things we didn't look at. I feel this is important for you to understand so you can get a grasp of what it is we found. We intentionally blocked respondent data from the 2011 NESE for those students that indicated they had already participated in study abroad activities. We did this because we want to take a look at students who are either still making the decision or have decided yes or no, but they haven't acted on it yet. Maybe it's not too late to help them change their mind and choose to go. So we wanted to get rid of or block out the students that had already gone. We also intentionally blocked out any respondent data for students that the institution has listed as a foreign national or a foreign student. We don't want to skew our results by including someone who is already studying abroad here in this country. Just felt that might be introducing some error that we could pretty easily set aside and with our analysis software. All right. If you feel that you want to pause this presentation at this point and take a longer read here, that's fine. What you're looking at is two sets of tests that we ran. The darker blue backgrounds, our dependent variable was the study abroad question with those the three possible answers, because since we ruled out the ones who've already gone. And then the independent variables are those of the institutional contributions, the 7 questions that we looked at. We did 3 sets of tests on that. It's never enough to really look at it just one way and then make a decision. I want to give a good, well-rounded picture of what's going on. So there are 3 separate sets of tests that we did with those dependent variables and independent variables. The discriminant analysis test, Kruskal-Wallis, non-parametric tests, and the Pearson correlation tests. Then we flipped the game board around a little bit. We made the dependent variable the different responses to the different institutional contributions, and then the independent variable was the responses to the study abroad. We did this I'll explain a little bit later in the presentation, but essentially we did it just to see if they're looking at the question from a different point of view would still show some of the same responses. So the 2 boxes are just some notes about the type of tests. I've got a little bit, I've got some more specific results on the following pages. So again, if you want to pause and read, you're welcome to. I'm just going to keep moving along. So we ran our discriminant analysis tests. These are, according to sort of good rules of thumb, really for the type of question we're asking, this is the best kind of test to run when we're trying to find out if there are predictors from one group of questions that might lead towards finding out if there's one particular route or path to getting to a response, such as our study abroad responses. This is the best way to do it with a discriminant analysis test. Now, there's some fairly strict rules on this test for it to really be something you hang your hat on. So the rules suggested that the results might get skewed if you had some outliers in the statistics for each of the questions you're looking at. So 3 of our questions did have some outliers, so we cut them out of this part of the test. Once again, this is why you run multiple kinds of tests. This is the most robust test. This is the most sort of nuanced and subtle test. So it basically barred us from looking into the acquiring a broad general education, thinking critically and analytically, and learning effectively on your own. There's another rule that states that non-normal curves could produce less than reliable results, and so we ran some data on that, and it did show that these are non-normal curves. Went ahead and ran the test since they are ideal, but we're just going to take everything we get from the discriminant analysis with a grain of salt. As a result, the remaining 4 questions we could look at, only one of the institutional contribution questions showed any possible statistically significant results, and that was the contributing to the welfare of your community. Everything else showed there wasn't any real correlation between positive responses on the institutional contribution questions and the desired result of finding students who are deciding to study abroad. So that was the discriminant analysis. Our Kruskal-Wallis tests, we did and were able to properly run this on all 7 of our institutional contribution questions, and they came back with 3 of the 7 questions came back with possible hits. It was learning effectively on your own, which might make sense since you're going to go off on a study abroad program. Understanding people of other racial and ethnic backgrounds, which is really the one we thought would be the biggest hit within this entire round of tests. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And then here we see contributing to the welfare of your community again. The last test we did with study abroad as a dependent variable, we ran some Pearson correlation tests to see if there's any direct or inverse correlations. Maybe the higher one scores, the less another one scores. So that's an inverse relationship. I would imagine we'd find direct relationships, the way the questions are structured. And there you go again. We see contributing to the welfare of your community as one of our responses, or one of our possible statistically significant responses. Okay, so let's look at it when we flipped the independent dependent variables. We did some one-way analysis of variance tests. Again, we see contributing to the welfare of the community is the one that sort of rises out of that set of tests. And we did some post-hoc multiple comparison tests. And again, here we are with contributing to the welfare of your community. So before we get into the conclusions, though, and run away with a snap decision on this, let's remember that apparent correlations between two variables does not automatically equal causation. We're not done yet. Just because we have an appearance of statistically significant data does not mean we're done with our work yet. So after this first run at the analysis, really what we have is a map of where to keep looking. I'm comfortable saying that we could ignore some of the original questions that we were looking at as how they relate to study abroad. And I'm not quite ready to make a battle plan based on what we have, but we are at least not ready to print posters and brochures and have pep rallies over community service just yet. It's definitely prudent that we also should look at some other data before we draw conclusions. And we had a little bit of time for another area of inquiry. So we decided to look at race and ethnicity to see if there were any correlations with the decision to study abroad. And I picked that one because it's kind of the opposite of the questions we've been looking at, which have a lot to do with opinions and perceptions about how students see what their institution values. So it's kind of a very different way to look at things. So let's take a look at that real quick. Ran 3 tests with study abroad as a dependent variable and the institutionally reported ethnicity as the independent variable. We ran the Kruskal-Wallis. We did some ANOVAs and also post hoc multiple comparisons. Once again, feel free to pause right here and take a look at these a little deeper. Here's what we found. The Kruskal-Wallis test and the one-way analysis of variance, or the ANOVA test, they can tell us if there's a statistically significant difference in the way that the ethnicities responded to the likelihood of studying abroad, but they can't tell us which group is more likely to plan to study abroad. So what they did tell us is there is a very significant likelihood that the desire to study abroad is different among ethnic groups. Doesn't tell us which ones, but it says, hey, there's really something going on here. So we look at the post hoc multiple comparison test, and those do compare the different ethnicities to each other. Just for instance, compares the Black or African American group to the white group or to the Hispanic group, and can tell us if there are differences between those groups. And sure enough, there is a very likely statistical significance in that Black and Hispanic students are more likely in a statistically significant way to choose to study abroad than the white students at this institution. So that is a very interesting thing and definitely gives us something we can work with. So let's look at our conclusions. We've got 2 things that were shown to have possible statistical significance in the study. One was that possibly student perception of how their institution values contributing to the welfare of your community is one. We never really showed a very strong correlation there, but it kept showing up. Every test we ran, that one kept showing up. There were a couple of other ones. Ones that might have been more or less surprising, but they didn't keep showing up. So maybe there's not much correlation there. This one showed up on every single test, at least in some way that makes us want to take a further look at it. So we should keep looking and exploring how we might correlate that with a desire to study abroad. I think we should do some qualitative work, looks into how students who have studied abroad perceive how this institution promotes that educational goal. Could give us some information there. But I think at a fairly low risk to budgets and plans, starting immediately, we can increase our institutional focus on the area of student development in contributing, or how much the school values students' contribution to the welfare of their community. And this is the kind of really interesting part, I felt, was that more than half the students rated their perception of how much the institution values this educational goal as very little or some, which are the two lowest, responses. So more than half the school thinks we don't really care too much about contributing to the welfare of our community. Yet, those who went on study abroad perceive that the school, tend to perceive that the school does care. You have to be careful in making broad or emphatic statements like that. So by increasing our efforts in promoting this educational goal, I think we could see a rise in study abroad participation, and it certainly is a low-risk move for the school to do that. Let's look at something else that I think we really ought to put some weight behind. The Black and Hispanic students are more likely to choose to study abroad than white students to a statistically significant degree. Our analysis showed that white students are quite a bit less likely to go on a study abroad program, and we need to look deeper into why that is, why white students are largely choosing not to engage in these opportunities, and why Black and Hispanic students are more willing to do so. It doesn't mean that 75% of them are going to do it, but quite a few more Black and Hispanic students as a percentage of their population will go into study abroad. So we're going to suggest that the administration fund an in-depth qualitative study on this topic, sit down and talk to students, get their stories in order to better understand the dynamics involved. We need to find out why students who could benefit the most from a diverse experience are choosing not to go. And this is particularly important given the abundant research available that shows engaging in diverse cultural experiences relates to college success and completion rates. Let's put some money behind this one and see if we can't get a clearer picture of what's going on. I'd like to thank you for listening to this presentation today. Some resources. The data set was provided by Dr. Matt Fuller. Used a statistical analysis was generated on SPSS version 24 by IBM. And the photo credit, picture of the Earth that I used in this broadcast was done by my friend Josh Ward, who took that picture just this last weekend with a stratospheric balloon launch and with a bunch of cameras and a big old styrofoam box underneath on board his balloon Starduster 2. And this picture that we've been taking a look at was taken about 99,000 feet above Central Texas. So pretty amazing stuff. Thought I'd include that in my presentation. All right, thanks, and I hope this has been informative.